Hello and welcome back to Tinker Talks Guns. Today we're going to talk about my budget home defense and hunting slug gun, which started life as a J.C. Higgins Model 20 12-gauge pump-action shotgun from Sears, Roebuck and Company. Now, before we get started, I'd like to shout out to my Patreon supporters. All of this costs money, and your contributions help more than you know. I'd also like to thank channel benefactors like Rain City Shooting Center, Pinto's Guns in Renton, Washington, and a host of lovely people who have helped with contributions of ammunition, parts, providing me guns to show you and to shoot so I can do these videos. So J.C. Higgins was the Sears brand for firearms for quite some time, and was discontinued, I believe, in 1961. Changed names to something more current, I suspect. And they sold a variety of bolt action and pump shotguns, bolt action and semi-automatic 22 rifles, hunting rifles, all sorts of things under the Sears Roebuck brand. And you could order these through the mail with very little formality. And the Model 20 appears to have been popular, judging from the numbers of them that I see for sale out there. Now, this originally was a hunting shotgun with a 24 or 28-inch barrel. And it's made by High Standard. And this was before High Standard made shotguns in their own name, which they started after J.C. Higgins stopped being a thing. And they're very nice shotguns. They are remarkably smooth in operation. For example, that's it. It just slides right open when you hit the release. And you can chamber around just by pumping the gun up from the hand grip. That's unusual. And again, this one had a 24 or 28-inch barrel, which isn't what I wanted. So how did I select something as obscure in this day and age as a J.C. Higgins shotgun for this project? Well, I actually got this a number of years ago, and I paid the princely sum of $100 for a pristine pump-action shotgun in beautiful condition. And I asked, why is it so cheap? And the guy who runs the store told me, which is Pinto's Guns, of course, said nobody knows what it is these days. Hard to argue with that, and I certainly wasn't going to argue with getting a beautiful shotgun for $100. And I wanted it as a home defense shotgun. So I shortened the barrel to 18¼ inches. Now, according to the ATF, you measure this from the breech face to the tip of the muzzle. So I made sure I had 18¼ inches there by using a marked dowel to get the right length. And I fabricated a front sight out of just scrap mild steel that was lying around my shop. Silver soldered it in place. And I always intended to mount a rear sight to it. And I never got around to it. Because for home defense use, the front sight was adequate. I mean, it let me keep on target at, 5 or 10 yards, which is all I needed. But I've had this old TRS 25 Bushnell red dot lying around. And I thought, I'm supposed to go hunting on Woodby Island this year for deer. And that's shotguns, handguns, and primitive weapons only. Primitive weapons being muzzle loaders, bows, and that sort of thing. And I thought I'd take my .44 Magnum. But then I thought, I've got odds and ends laying around. I have a sight laying around, some Picatinny rail just lying around loose. Why not mount my red dot on the shotgun? So I cut a section of the Picatinny rail to length, finished off the ends, used some aluminum black on them to make them look uniform, drilled it, and then I drilled and tapped 2 holes in the receiver. And this was a very high-tech operation. I opened the mechanism, stuffed a rag in there to catch any particles, glued the optic in place, or glued the rail rather in place with super glue, and then used that to mark where I would drill. And then I drilled the holes holding the shotgun manually on my drill press and threaded them by hand with a tap. And it works just fine. I had my doubts because the only time I'd previously tried a similar operation, it was so far off I couldn't zero the optic. There wasn't enough adjustment to get it to actually bear a relationship to where the bullets were hitting. I was kind of afraid that would happen again this time. It did not. I was able to sight it in quite easily. And I sighted it in at, well, the maximum range is like 23 yards on the indoor range. So I sighted it in to shoot about 3 inches high at 25 yards, which means that at 50 yards, the slug should still be well within the basket for hunting deer. So that's all very nice. And the red dot works. Sighted in. And then I got it out and realized the recoil from the slugs was so heavy that the front lens was starting to back out of the housing. So I'm going to see if I can't just glue that back in. I mean, short term, it only needs to work for a shot or two at most. And I fired probably 7 or 8 slugs, ensuring everything was sighted in. And I got to tell you, those Rio R10 Brennecke slugs fired from this shotgun are brutal. In fact, they when I later switched to double-aught buckshot, it was like, oh, this is nice. Pretty heavy recoil. It was very easy to get dialed in, get everything adjusted properly. And I'm not going to do a tabletop as such because this is too big. But you can see the red dot is securely mounted. There are 2 8-32 screws that are nicely Loctited in place, holding the rail in place. And of course, they're countersunk into the rail so that they don't get in the way of mounting optics. I do have a couple of other optics I could mount, but one of them is too high and the other one is too crappy. I really don't know if it would survive the recoil for those 12 gauge slugs. This one is just perfect. I just have to make sure the lens doesn't decide to depart. Now about the shotgun itself, it has a very typical crossbolt style safety, much like you'd find on a Mossberg Maverick 88 or any number of other sporting firearms. The trigger has a very short, crisp pull, but it's about 4 pounds, and that's fine. It works good. And there is a magazine lockout, which is a feature you don't always see on pump shotguns, and it does work. So you can lock the magazine out, pump the slide, and to empty it, and then toss whatever special purpose kind of shell you want in the ejection port without worrying about the magazine. So if you've got buckshot loaded and you decide you need a slug, lock the magazine out, pop the slug in, and you're ready to go if you take the safety off. And I don't know that I'll ever use that feature, but it's kind of neat that it's there. Loading is typical 12 gauge fashion. Run the pump forward and just stick shells in. Now there is the shell catch on the inside here. To unload, you just press that, the shell pops down, and you pull it out. Rinse and repeat until all 5 rounds in the magazine have been removed. And the only real blemish on this shotgun is right here where I somehow managed to knock a chunk off the stock. And I want to fix that, not for any functional reason, just because ew. Interestingly, the 65-year-old or so recoil pad still works just as intended. Oftentimes they stiffen up and become basically hard. This one hasn't. And that was very nice when shooting those slugs. So, very old shotgun, repurposed as a home defense shotgun, in which it served admirably by being there for many years, unfired, and now repurposed as a slug gun. And I have to say, Rio is a cheap brand of ammo, but those Rio Brennecke slugs, firing from a rest, I could stack them at almost 25 yards, which is pretty good. So it's ready to go if I am ever ready to go for deer on Woodby Island. A couple weeks yet. And really happy with how it came out. Now, J.C. Higgins shotguns, since I bought this one those many years ago, seem to have been discovered, and they're now selling for $250, $300, even more. So they are no longer the bargain that they once represented. However, duplicating this setup in a Mossberg Maverick 88 will cost about $200, plus the cost of an optic. This one I'm into for less than $200, including the optic, but a lot of that's due to my own handwork, which not everybody can do. Anyway, I'm just chuffed that I was able to get this dialed in so easily, and really looking forward to possibly taking it out on the hunt. So, old dog, new trick, and new utility. So, what could be better? The fact that it's cheap, that it costs very little money. That makes it better. Anyway, there it is. So, I hope this finds you well. Stay safe, take care, and we'll talk to you again real soon.